Baseball isn't just numbers, numbers, numbers.
This game is not being played on computers.
You don't do that with a bunch of statistical gimmicks.
You don't put a team together with a computer.
We're talking weighted runs created plus,
expected WOBA,
his sweet spot rate,
defensive runs above average,
average exit velocity,
barrel rate,
xFIP,
BABIP,
SIERA.
We are above replacement radio. And welcome to Above Replacement Radio, where we're talking baseball kind of whenever. I'm your host, Chris Gianta. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Curran. How you doing, Daniel?
Chris, I'm doing very well today. It's another weekend for another episode of ARR. We have a couple more moves to talk about, and we have, I think, maybe my favorite top 10 list that we're doing this year. The shortstop list is so tough. There's a lot of heartbreak involved with this list. I've found out where you'd think, player X is too good to be ranked this low on the list, but simply because of the amount of talent on this list, you just have to do it, and it just doesn't feel right. But I had several of those making my list, but I'm excited to go over them.
Yeah, I'm very excited as well. I mean, the top, I feel like everyone in my top 5 is going to be in my top 10 for my top 50 overall player list. So it's weird to have, it is certainly weird to have, especially the top 6 where they are in the ranking outside of 1 and 2, where it would make sense to have them 1 and 2, but 3 through 6 on any other list would be number 1 or number 2, especially the last 3 lists that we've done, center field, catcher, first base. I feel like they 3 through 6 would rank above either all but 1 or all of the players on the previous list. So it is certainly something I'm excited for. But we were gonna get into the top 10 shortstops later on. But first we have a little bit of news to get into. No big pins dropping necessarily this past week, but some significant moves going down. And the first one we'll start off with is the most recent one. Jeff Hoffman, one of the best relievers on the market, just signed with the Blue Jays for 3 years, $33 million. What did you think about how this shook up?
Yeah, I mean, the Blue Jays, they finally got someone to take their money, right? We've been waiting for the Blue Jays to somebody, it sounds like they just keep, they've been in on so many guys, they've been second on so many guys, and it just hasn't come to fruition yet. And obviously, I don't think Hoffman means they're done with other moves. I think this is just a piece. But they had one of the worst bullpens in all of baseball last year. A little fun fact is that Hoffman was originally drafted by the Blue Jays. He was drafted in the first round in 2013 and was traded in the Troy Tulowitzki trade back in 2015. So after all that, he's coming back to the Blue Jays organization. So a pretty cool little unknown homecoming there. But all that, sentimental stuff aside, this is an important move for the Blue Jays to have made. They now have a defined closer, a clear-cut guy at the back end of the bullpen, something that they desperately needed last year with Jordan Romano's down year. And not only that, but they have him for the next 3 years and at a pretty good price. $11 million per year is not bad at all for the second best reliever that was on the market. I wouldn't have been surprised. Well, he did not turn down, but the reporting was that he had a 3-year, $40 million agreement with the Orioles, but they flagged his physical, which led to the Blue Jays signing him. So maybe that's why the price was lower than maybe we would have expected. But regardless, the Blue Jays got a guy for the back end of that bullpen.
If that physical doesn't if that physical is not really a big deal at all, I don't know how else to describe this other than a complete steal on the Blue Jays end. 11 million a year as for someone who has been one of the more dominant relievers over the last couple of years is none other than a steal. And I do understand that his postseason numbers were really abysmal. I'm sure that maybe some of that value was lost because of that. But just looking at what he's done over the past 2 years as a reliever, among 97 relievers with 100 plus innings pitched over the last 2 years, he ranks 3rd and 5th and 6th in ERA. So and the strikeout rate has been around 33% each of the last 2 years. His walk rate has been really, really low. This past year, he was 91st percentile in expected ERA, 96th percentile in chase rate, whiff rate, and strikeout rate. Yeah, it's like I really love this deal for the Blue Jays, especially given that they lost Jordan Romano and they replaced him with someone who's I think significantly better.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's interesting to me about Jeff Hoffman, 2 years ago, uh, he started throwing his slider, which he only developed in 2021. Well, actually, that's not true. He stopped throwing it in 2020 and then picked it up back up in 2021. In 2023, he started throwing it as his primary pitch. He threw it 47% of the time in 2023, 40% in 2024, the most of any pitch in his arsenal. And it's been his best pitch. And I think it's kind of led to him becoming the dominant reliever that we've years. He is a 1.6 run value per 100 on his slider over the last 2 years, and that ranks tied for fifth over the last 2 years among the 79 relievers or 79 pitchers rather to have thrown at least 750 sliders total since 2023. So it's an effective pitch. It's allowed him to become this strikeout artist that he's been. With obviously not bad walk numbers out there with very good walk numbers actually. And it's been a really solid pitch for him. So I'm excited to see how that fares in Toronto.
Right, right. Yeah, I'm just honestly trying to look at the history of like reliever deals and seeing where it
Mhm.
compares because I feel like this like he could have gotten a lot more and I'm sure the physical had something to do with that because um with the uh with the Orioles I think that was supposed to be a 3-year $39 million deal and that was going to be 13 million a year but even that seemed just a
Yeah,
little bit
I would have taken that.
yeah, like that seemed a little bit on the cheaper side as well, but like I'm trying to think back to like this offseason, I know Clay Holmes got 3 years, 38 million. I would take Hoffman over Holmes. I guess with Holmes, there's the prospect of him potentially
Become
becoming
a
a starter.
starter, which they talked about with Hoffman as well. He also used to be a starter in a past part of his career.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, but like, I don't know. I mean, we're 2 years, yeah, 2 years removed from, um, a mid-30s Kenley Jansen getting 16 million a year. Not, obviously Jansen had a crazy track record, and I know he was coming off a year with good peripherals, but still, like, you know, I think I would value Hoffman right now, higher than I would have valued Jansen, 2 years ago and Jansen got 5 million more per year. So yeah, I find it really interesting, but that's all to say, like very good on the Blue Jays end to get this deal done because yeah, even if it doesn't turn out well, you're still only paying the guy $11 million a year. So it's not like there's really much risk to this.
Yeah, absolutely. Hoffman's slider, going back to it, is produced some really solid results on the batted ball front and on the whiff front. He has a 44.9% whiff rate on his slider. Over the last 2 years, on that same list of 79 relievers, he ranks sixth highest. And also, he has a 15% pop-up rate on his slider over the last 2 years. For context on that one, it last 2 years, there are 269 pitchers to have at least 50 batted balls against their slider. And Jeff Hoffman, with his 15.4% popper up, ranks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12th highest on that list of over 200. So, he gets his very good contact on it. And also, that's even, when contact is made, which is not particularly often. He's only given up 3 home runs on over 800 total pitches for context.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, because I remember when Austin Riley hit that home run off of him in the playoffs 2 years
Mhm.
ago. It was off that slider, and I was like, this is very rare. Like that doesn't happen very often with Jeff Hoffman's slider. Just looking at the stats, and I was like, well, Austin Riley must have done a pretty good job at not only identifying the pitch, but you know, um, just taking advantage of it or whatever. I'm trying to see where that whiff rate on the slider ranks over the last 2 years, because it's been over,
Sixth.
yeah, been over 44% each of the last 2 years. So yeah,
Mhm.
sixth highest whiff rate on the slider. Um, so yeah, I mean, and yeah, the fastball velocity is really high too. He averaged 96.7 miles per hour on his four seam fastball last year. I think it was 97.1 miles per hour the year before. So, that's what kind of confused me about why he w wasn't getting more money, because like on the underlying side of things, outside of potentially health, which we don't really know about, um, but outside of that, um, all the underlying things seem to really line up for him. Whether that be strikeout rate, walk rate, the uh, contact numbers, or even just his velocity. Like that hasn't, it's not like he's had a dramatic dip in that. And that seems to be on the up and up as well. So yeah, yeah, it seems like a good deal on the Blue Jays end, unless there's some things that we just don't know about. And maybe the Orioles are right about something, but um, it could just be, we've known the Orioles the past couple off seasons to be a little bit more hesitant than they should be. So maybe it's just another example of them just being a little bit too careful.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, obviously, I don't know if the information will ever come out about what was the goal. Maybe it's something we'll see. Hopefully not. But yeah, I mean, the Orioles. I don't think bullpen's their biggest need, but it certainly would have been nice to add someone like Hoffman.
Yeah, perhaps that's why they're being careful, is because, it's one of the places they don't really have a vested interest in investing. They should probably be looking more into starting pitching and maybe filling some of those roles in their lineup, at least temporarily. But yeah, no, it's good that the Blue Jays, got something going. I'm sure, I think they hope it can be, the start of something this offseason, because there are still some guys out there that they could get, and they've been involved in discussions with, notably, Flaherty and Bregman. So yeah, it could be the start of something. But yeah, anything more on the Hoffman signing?
No, I think that's kind of all I had on that. I mean, it's a necessary move for the Blue Jays, but it's one of many necessary moves.
Yeah, yeah, especially in the old AL East. A lot of competition there. But yeah, um the next acquisition we are going to talk about, Gavin Lux, longtime member of the Dodgers organization, at one point a top prospect within it. And hasn't been a bad player, but hasn't necessarily been a superstar quite yet. He's 27 years old right now, and he just got traded to the Cincinnati Reds. What did you think about this move?
I had a lot of thoughts on this one. I wondered why it was the Reds because I don't think second base is the biggest need. If you think about the teams that need a second base, I wouldn't put the Cincinnati Reds up on that list. I thought this was a major fumble from like the Mariners or the Yankees, teams that clearly need a second baseman. Um, but one thing that to seriously consider is Mike Sirota, who is the outfield prospect that is going from the Reds to the Dodgers in this trade, notably of the 2023 Hyannis Harbor Hawks. Sirota was a top draft prospect this time last year. There was possible talk of him going top 10 overall. He was hurt a bit during his junior season at Northeastern. And when I say he put up a down year, I mean he put up a 986 OPS, which would be considered a down year by his standards prior to his junior year. He ends up falling in, I believe, the second round to the Reds, right? The third round to the Reds last year. Yeah, in his last year at Northeastern, he slashed 298, 473, 513 for a 986 OPS in 256 plate appearances. He was originally drafted by the Dodgers out of high school. They were, upset that they couldn't sign him, and I think they just really have always wanted him in their organization. I think it's interesting that the Reds got this guy. I would imagine the Dodgers probably went to the Reds first on this one, if I had to guess. I think it makes sense that they would have been shopping Gavin Lux. I think it makes sense that despite maybe the lack of positional need, they really wanted Mike Sirota. I then looked at this and thought, look at what Gavin Lux did in the second half. Let's do it.
Yeah, right. I do agree that the positional need is not necessarily there. It is funny, like just the headline is like the Reds finally got an infielder, just they've been waiting for the day, but they finally got their infielder. Ellie De La Cruz, Noel V. Marte, Spencer Steer, Matt McLean, Jamer
Encarnacion
Candelario.
Strand.
They were not enough. They were clearly not enough. They needed Gavin Lux, and they finally got him. But yeah, it's certainly interesting. And yeah, they get Sirota's an outfielder, right? So
Yes,
yeah,
Sorota's an outfielder.
they
This
got rid
also,
of
I think this also makes up for loss of Jonathan India. Except he's now left-handed.
right. Yeah, it does fill that. I mean, it is weird to say because like it does like India leaving didn't leave a hole, but I guess it fills that hole sort of. It's definitely interesting. Um and yeah, the as you mentioned, Gavin Lux definitely turned up a little bit once mid-July hit. In his final 65 games, he put up a 903 OPS, 386 BABIP. So some of that might have been
Yeah.
the work of some good luck, but
So I actually have some numbers. Gavin Lux in the first to second half last year. In the first half, he slashed 211, 264, 291 for a 555 OPS. Just bad all around the board. But in the second half, he slashed 309, 396, 517 for a 913 OPS. His exit velocity went up from 87.1 miles per hour to 90.1 miles per hour. That's a 4 mile per hour increase, which is very good. His fly ball rate went from 16% to 23%. His exit velocity on fly balls went from 89 miles per hour to 91 miles an hour, a 2 mile per hour increase. The pull rate on fly balls, if you listen to the show, you know that this is something that I'm big on. It went from 15.6% to 30%. He nearly doubled it, which is excellent. His barrel rate went from 3.6% to 10%. His walk rate went from 6.8% to 11.9%, a 5% increase. So I think there's definitely a lot of optimism in Gavin Lux coming into this trade. He obviously is coming off of probably the best stretch of baseball he's ever played in the majors. I would venture to argue. I'm sure obviously, like you mentioned, a 393 BABIP over that second half. So maybe it won't be to that degree, but I think they can definitely hope for some solid offense. Probably out of the DH spot because Luck is not very good defensively, and they obviously have plenty of infield options, but there's definitely some versatility. I don't think there's really going to be a set DH on this team. They can kind of plug and play guys wherever. There should be a lot of versatility, and I think Lux will be maybe a consistent bat, especially in that ballpark.
yeah. I'll be honest. I did not know about his turn, like the fact that he turned around, or the fact that I didn't realize his trends from last year. Like I just saw a 703 OPS last year, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh, kind of had an average year. But yeah, no, that is a good sign, especially considering the circumstances of what he was facing, coming off of like he didn't play at all in 2023 because of an
Yep.
injury. Um,
ACL tear, right?
yeah, yeah, it was some ligament tear that kept him out um for the whole year in 2023. So yeah, I guess it sort of makes sense that he had a slow start in 2024, and he kind of righted the ship. And yeah, it's a good sign, especially someone heading into his age 27 season. So yeah,
If I
I guess
remember, if
there's
I
some.
remember correctly, Gavin Lux's ACL injury, it happened in spring training. I remember this, but it was like days after the Edwin Diaz World Baseball Classic injury, and you had a bunch of fans debating like, should we allow MLB players to play in the World Baseball Classic right before the season because they could risk injury? And days later, that happened to Gavin Lux, and it's like, well, there's your argument right there. It happens in spring training too. It's unfortunate, it sucks, and we don't like it, but it's sometimes it just happens.
Right, yeah, exactly. Well, you know, Lux didn't there was nothing to celebrate in spring training, so he wouldn't have injured himself celebrating. So there is that
No.
argument, I
Yeah,
guess.
that's true.
Um, but
Unless he was celebrating like the Cactus League championship or whatever,
yeah,
which is
that
a
is
huge thing.
it is a pretty big deal. Like, people there is the debate of like, would you rather get the World Series ring or the Cactus League ring?
Yeah.
And
Or the I mean grapefruit slash Cactus League, obviously.
yeah, 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 exactly,
How
exactly.
many what percent of like diehard baseball fans do you think could tell you who had the best record in spring training last year?
Um, I mean, I
I
could,
would say 0%.
yeah, no, because you and I probably can't
No,
tell
not a
you that.
shot.
Um, I
I couldn't
remember,
tell you I couldn't tell you what my own team's record was. I don't even like I watch spring training games. I don't keep track of who wins and loses because it doesn't matter.
yeah, I remember when I was like 10 or 11, I would get so hype if the Red Sox were doing well in spring training. It's like, oh my God, it's gonna be our year. I
It's
can't wait.
this is dude. Yeah, it gets to the seventh inning. You got guys you've never heard of pitching. It's like, yeah, but we're teeing off on this guy with our guys that no one's ever heard of. So we're gonna be so good.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, like Moro Gomez is killing it for us right now. But yeah, no, with Gavin Lux, I think there's I guess there is some good optimism. The interesting thing with him is he is coming off a career low in fly ball rate, 19%. I forget if you mentioned any shift in
There was a shift. It was 16.7% to 23.1%.
So yeah, okay. I guess that is a good sign.
Yeah.
Going into Great American Ballpark, you do want that fly ball rate to be at least average, considering the advantages that that ballpark gives you when you hit fly balls. Um, so yeah, that is a good sign. Yeah, actually, yeah, you bringing up those numbers and those shifts has given me much more optimism about this deal for the Reds.
Yeah, I mean I see why it was made. I mean, it wasn't exactly a positional need, but I think it does make the team better regardless. I think the Dodgers really wanted Sirota. I mean, I think I look at this more as like how did the Mariners and Yankees among other teams not get this done? And I think that probably was a factor. If I had to guess, I do think the Dodgers probably called first on this.
Yeah, I would guess that I would venture to guess that as well.
Hmm.
And yeah, Lux has 2 years of control left. Um so yeah, he's got time to up his free agent value, when the time comes. Um so that's a cool thing. And yeah, the Dodgers are definitely going to be in a fine spot. Like they have a lot of options in the middle infield, especially with Mookie Betts playing there. So they got Mookie Betts, they have, Chris Taylor, Tommy Edman, Miguel Rojas in there can play the middle infield as well. And then they just signed Hai Song Kim, who's their projected second baseman on Fangraphs. So yeah, they have plenty of options in there. They didn't necessarily need Lux. Not that the Reds did, but as you said, could be an improvement to their team. Whether he's DHing or playing some sort of infield spot, or has he had some outfield time, or am I thinking of someone else?
Who are we talking about?
Gavin Lux.
No, I mean I think he's primarily a second baseman. I don't know if he's had outfield time.
What
I
what
don't
was I
think
thinking
so.
of? Standard fielding. He played 17 games in the or he's played 45 career games in the outfield. Um, 339 and 2/3 innings. So maybe the Reds try him out there. He played in 2022 he played 28 games in the outfield. So that is an option, I guess. I don't know how he feels about it, but
Hmm.
he has played in the outfield before. I don't know if he's played very well, but he has played there. Um, or actually, the final thing I'll look at is what his outs above average were. Um, yeah, in 2022, -2 outs above average in left field, and that was only in 28 games. So yeah, he's probably not the best defensive outfielder, but I guess he can play there. Um, but yeah, anything more on the Lux deal?
No, I mean that was kind of all.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, now on to the next acquisition that we'll talk about. Um, a legend of the game, but not necessarily the biggest addition of 2024. Um, Justin Verlander signs with the San Francisco Giants for was 1 year, 15
I
million.
believe that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, $15 million. What did you think about this move?
I mean, like, there's not much to think about it. I mean, we know who Justin Verlander is. He's coming into San Francisco with very little to prove, to very little to really like establish other than to help them win, maybe to prove that he has something left in the tank, kind of, I guess, the bare minimum of what you want to bring to a team. Certainly there is, a veteran presence that he could add for maybe guys like Logan Webb, guys like Kyle Harrison, who are looking to develop on that team, and maybe a couple others as well. Yeah, I mean, the Giants needed maybe one more pitcher just to at least serve as a stopgap for this year. I don't know if they really have fun coming up through the system right now, but in terms of starting pitching, but I mean, Verlander is a guy that can hopefully throw you some innings last year. Even in a down year, he did throw 90 last year. Um, so it's and yeah, hey, it's a stop. You get a Hall of Famer. Maybe you get some milestones. Maybe you get him like passing guys on some of like the all-time career lists or whatever. I can't imagine they're gonna get his 300th win. He's still at 262. So he's seeking the good old 38 win season this year. They'll get his 3,500th strikeout, probably, which is
Um,
cool.
yeah, I have the leaders pulled up. If he gets 94 strikeouts, he passes the big train, the wiser wonder,
Wow.
Walter Johnson,
Yeah.
for strikeouts. If Justin Verlander strikes out 100 and 19, I think the math would be, he would pass Gaylord Perry. And if he does the unlikely thing of getting 100 and fit, I think it would be 159 strikeouts, he would pass Don Sutton and he would be number 7 on the list.
Yeah.
If he gets if he gets 200 and 225 strikeouts, he would pass Tom Seaver. So be on the
Yeah.
lookout for the 225 strikeout season from Justin Verlander. Um, but
Yeah.
but
He
yeah,
they'll get number 3,500. He's at 34-16 right now. So he needs what, 84
84.
strikeouts. Yeah,
Yeah,
which if he throws enough innings, he should get that.
he would become number 9 on the list. Well, although he does have Scherzer right behind him. So
That is
uh,
true.
so
Yeah.
Scherzer in all
Although
likelihood
Scherzer is
will
unsigned.
uh yeah, if Scherzer finds a team, I think he will pass Verlander at some point this season.
Mhm.
Because he's only 9 strikeouts behind Verlander right now. Um but but yeah, back to the signing. I want to wait to fully evaluate it until the offseason is over because um if I'm a Giants fan right now and I know we need some extra starting pitchers, it's like, okay, this is cool, but you know this can't be it. This can't be it if I'm a Giants fan. Like I view this sort of how when the Red Sox signed Lucas Giolito last offseason, it was like, okay, it's cool. We have an extra guy. We're gonna have a guy that is gonna give us some innings. But we need to sign someone else. And the Red Sox never ended up actually signing really anyone else significant. Um, that's kind of, as a Giants fan, that would be, the most horrible scenario out there is if you only sign Justin Verlander as your starting pitcher after you just lost Blake Snell, and you're supposedly trying to compete. So yeah, I can't fully evaluate where what this means for the Giants until the offseason is over because yeah, as a Giants fan, it would be a little bit disheartening right now when you're like involved in talks um, for Jack Flaherty, and then all of a sudden you sign Justin Verlander. Hopefully that doesn't mean
I
anything for
can't
the
imagine that takes him out of it.
yeah. Hopefully that doesn't mean anything for the Jack Flaherty sweepstakes. But if Jack Flaherty ends up signing somewhere else and you have Justin Verlander, it's like, okay, well, I'm still kind of disappointed here. So yeah, I mean, it would be he's an interesting addition. He's coming off, one of the worst years of his career. His although, his peripherals were definitely better than his results, but still, like You definitely want more as a Giants fan. It'll be cool to have some fun historical moments. Him passing probably Walter Johnson on the strikeout list this year, and potentially Gaylord Perry. Um, there's the Giants over recent years have had like some interesting career like career parts of careers for certain legendary pitchers. Like Randy Johnson got his 300th win with the Giants, and
Mhm.
Steve Carlton I think got his 4,000 strikeout with the Giants or something like that. uh like guys who are not known for being with the Giants have gotten some interesting moments with the Giants. So maybe Justin Verlander can be that, but I don't think he'll be necessarily a top of the line pitcher like he was 3 years ago now.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. He's going into his age 42 season. It's, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you in that, if the Giants are trying to compete, their only starting pitching acquisition cannot be a 42-year-old.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
exactly.
the 14-year-old that had the worst season he's had maybe in his entire career last year.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And yeah, outside of Flaherty, what are the who are the other main starters out there? I feel like most of them
I
are
feel like
off the
most of them are
board.
done, right? Let me check.
Yeah, like because yeah, I'm trying to I'm
Flaherty's
looking
kind
at
of the one, right?
yeah.
Andrew Heaney, Nick Pavetta, Patrick Corbin, Kyle Gibson, Chris Flexen, Andrew or Lance Lynn, Ross Stripling, a reunion with the Giants. Jose
Worked out.
Quintana's still out there. That feels like a Giantsy type move.
Yeah, that would be cool. Um,
What if they signed Kershaw? I would hate that so much, dude. They just threw him like just to be petty, they threw him like a year 25 million.
the rivalry. Can't believe it. Clayton
That
Kershaw.
would be worse than like any like betraying because it's like wouldn't be necessary at all. You could just retire.
Yeah, it only like it's
Hey,
not
the
gonna.
Giants get Kershaw's 3,000 strikeout comes against the Dodgers.
Oh my
How many
God.
off is Kershaw? He's 32 off. Somewhat like the Dodgers got to sign him, man.
Yeah, I think they're just waiting for his price to like quote unquote go down.
Has anyone how many offers does he have? Like I don't know. I can't imagine he has much of a desire to go anywhere else unless he just, unless the Dodgers are just basically like, yeah, we're not doing it. Go pick another place. But like he can't. I would hate to see him pitch on any other team.
Yeah, it would be odd for sure, for sure. Um,
Can't have
but
it.
but yeah, anything more on the Verlander deal?
No, I think that's all.
Yeah, and the last bit of news we have to get into, not an acquisition,
Staying in the Bay Area,
but yeah,
I guess,
player.
right? Is San Francisco is Sacramento the Bay Area?
I would just say Northern California, I
Yeah.
guess. But yeah, staying in Northern California for a few extra years. He was already, under control, under team control, but he's secure in the bag, as the kids say. Brent Rooker gets a 5-year extension. Um, he or it buys out 2 years of free agency essentially. He had
Mhm.
3 years of control left. He signs a 5-year deal, $60 million. After a career year from him, what did you think about this signing?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. This is a move that makes sense, at least for Brent Rooker to take, right? I mean, 2 years ago, he was coming off of what like the third team that he had been cut by or something like that, uh, or maybe his second team. Regardless, he was struggling to just stay in the big leagues a couple of years ago, and now he gets presented with a $60 million extension. You take that deal every time, 100%, especially when you're going into age 30. You've had two good seasons in a row now. And the most recent one being much better than the other, despite both being good. Yeah, Brent Rooker, this is good for him. I'm happy for him. He earned this. He probably earned more than this, to be honest, but you don't say no to that kind of money when it's put in front of you, given the circumstances.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And yeah, people, the mainstream might not necessarily know a whole lot about Brent or yeah, Brent Rooker quite yet. Um, just because, yeah, he's been on a kind of a porous team, but he's been he's been a 30 home run hitter each of the last 2 years, but he's been a good bit more than that too. He ranked seventh in weighted runs created plus this past year in all of MLB, and he ranks 10th in all of MLB in weighted runs created plus over the last 2 years. And yeah, just a guy who has hit the ball really, really well. Quality contact is just, off the charts. And also his expected numbers are up there as well. This past year he was 96th percentile in expected WOBA, 97th percentile in expected slugging, 89th percentile in average exit velocity, and 97th percentile in barrel rate. He's kind of just a prototype slugger and has just done really well over the last 2 years. I will say there's some things from last year um, that may not carry over to this next year. Like I think he had a 362 BABIP this past year as someone who doesn't necessarily have a high line drive rate. So there's maybe a little bit of reason to believe that there's going to be regression, but considering his improvement over the last 2 years, he probably will find ways to improve even more. So, he's and heading into his age 30 season as well. So yeah, it's kind of a feel good signing, especially the A's are not known for dishing out money, so it's good that at least Rooker is going to be able to live well after his career arc.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's kind of established himself, I'd say right now, as one of the elite hitters in the game. I wouldn't be surprised if either of us find him on our top 50 lists this year. Obviously, I haven't filled mine out. I don't know if you have, but I wouldn't be shocked if I end up jotting his name down somewhere. Um, Obviously, I mean, we'll have to see what kind of adjustments the Sacramento thing has on him. If it makes him a better hitter, it makes him a worse hitter. Maybe if it just doesn't make a change at all. I would be inclined to believe that maybe he hits better in the minor league park, in the PCL park. A park that's known for uh, a league at least that's known for a lot of offense. That could be something that benefits him. It is frustrating, obviously, that the A's don't make deals like this until after they leave Oakland. I don't think Brent Rooker is the first player that should have been given an extension like this from the team, but he is. Regardless, like there's plenty of other guys I think you can point to and say this kind of guy, I don't know, maybe deserved this kind of extension, maybe more money, maybe more years. Regardless, still would have been a below market deal that have taken. We don't know if those offers were made or not, but frustrating that this is kind of the first one that we're seeing, and it comes after they're leaving Oakland.
Yeah, it is like it does kind of confirm any belief uh that John Fisher kind of refrained from refrained from spending in order to make the team a little bit worse, make the attendance a little bit worse so that he could justify moving. Um and like I think that kind of certifies any beliefs um that people had about that. So yeah, it does leave a little bit of bad taste of like, this could have yeah, this easily could have been done to more players and guys like Matt Olson, Matt Chapman, Marcus Semien could have stuck around a little bit longer. And this could have happened this could have prolonged some success of some good A's teams and just didn't happen. But yeah, no, it's a cool thing for Brent Rooker and yeah, considering what's the park he's going to be at this next year, I think it's certainly going to be more hitter friendly than the Oakland Coliseum. He's coming off a year where he hit 39 home runs, and considering he's going to be playing at a minor league ballpark where the dimensions are fairly standard. I think it's 330 down the left field line, 325 down the right field line, but the walls don't appear very tall. I think he's a candidate to maybe even like put up 50 home runs next year.
100%. I would agree with that.
Not saying that he's like definitely going to do it, but I think he's certainly a candidate. Like could lead the AL in home runs or something like that if Judge doesn't keep up his pace. So yeah, no, I'm like it's pretty exciting and it's possible that the A's got ahead of it and got ahead of his value and like save some money on their end because yeah, he could certainly up his value, these next couple years too.
Hmm.
But yeah, anything more on the extension?
No, I think that's everything. We can get into our list now.
Yeah, we have the top 10 shortstops in baseball. What a fun time. What a glorious day to talk about the top 10 shortstops
Shortstop
in baseball.
position.
Yeah, and yes, for just before we get into it, if you're curious about what we think the top 10 first baseman, center fielders or catchers are, check out the previous three episodes. We've already done three of these. This is our fourth list. And yeah, this is a what we think they will do, or where we think they will rank in 2025, like who we think will have the best seasons. So yeah, it's not necessarily all about what they have done, but kind of pointing out some signs of what they've done and thinking how this will translate to 2025. So yeah, we'll use some underlying stats like exit velocity, expected stats, batted ball distribution, things like that, to talk about what these players potentially could do this upcoming year. But yeah, without further ado, who is your number 10 shortstop in Major League Baseball?
So my number 10 is a guy that I had on my list last year, of which there are seven on this list, including one complete newcomer and two guys that were uh, not shortstops, but on lists of mine last year. Number 10 is a guy that I had at number 5 last year. So it sounds like he had some sort of big down year that, made him fall down the list. And that's not even really the case. It's just given the talent of this position and what I think is going to happen going forward. This is what led to putting Trey Turner number 10, which is not really something that I thought I'd do going into this list, but just looking at the talent, I think there simply are nine better shortstops this year. Trey Turner time with an injury last year, and with all our sample size and whatnot, did have a better offensive season than he did in 2023. A higher OB, a higher slugging, a higher OPS. Obviously, he didn't have the slump that he did for a few months in that 2023 season, but he also didn't have the big offensive surge that he had late that year either. But regardless, the overall numbers were still better. Now, that being said, there are some things that I'm a little concerned about with Trey Turner. The first of all, the base running value wasn't exactly there last year to the same degree that it always has been. He's still an elite base runner. He just happens to have been overtaken a few guys, which is a natural thing that happens when you're 31 years old and all of the best base runners are in their early to mid 20s. Which obviously when that goes, that's kind of when you've lost the foundation of what Trey Turner is. Doesn't mean that he's not a great player, but his sweet spot rate went down by nearly 6% last year. His walk rate went down to a career low. His ground ball rate rose by 40%, or excuse me, by 7%. It went up from 40% to 47%. His fly ball rate went down 4%. His line drive rate went down by 2%. A lot of his batted ball metrics were a bit concerning. The one good thing, though, is that his pull rate on fly balls was 32.4% in 2024, which is a career high for him. But if that number goes back down, I do feel we could see maybe a down year offensively for Trey Turner with everything else going the way that it has in the last year. That's why he's my number 10, is because, this is the list based on how I expect him to be this year. I like that number, but it seems like there's a little too much that it hinges on, staying the same, going up, going down, whatever. And given the talent on this list, I still think he's a very solid player. He might be on my top 50 list, but he just happens to be 10 at this particular position.
Right, right. Yeah. I'll keep talking about Trey Turner because he's my number 10 as well. He was my number 6 last year. But yeah, he's heading into his age 32 season. He ranked 10th among shortstops in F4 last year, and he ranks 8th over the last 2 years. And yeah, I do share some of the concerns that you have on the offensive side and in both sides of the offensive side with base running and hitting. He's coming off career lows in expected batting average and expected WOBA in seasons in which he had at least 50 plate appearances, which is not, a very high minimum to have. And he also had a career low in sprint speed, and that sprint speed dropped by 0.7 feet per second from 2023 to 2024. And that partially led to him having the lowest number of stolen bases he's had in a season where he's played 60 plus games. And yeah, a notable stat from last year is he had 10 stolen bases in the first 33 games of the year. Then he hit the IL with a strained hamstring and then had 9 stolen bases in the final 88 games of the year. So it was he basically went from stealing a base every 3 games to stealing a base every 10 games after that strained hamstring. So I guess it could raise both optimism and pessimism, excuse me,
Pessimism.
pessimism. But because it could mean that maybe he just needed more time to recover, and he's using the offseason to recover and potentially gain that speed back, because that sprint speed drop was a little bit dramatic. But it also could mean that that hamstring is lingering, and it could just mean he is slower, and we shouldn't be expecting the same level of base running. I'm sure there's some sort of balance between the two. But yeah, because of the I guess drop in some of the underlying offensive stuff and the general base running ability, he drops down the list um, and and makes him number 10. If it was a if it was a list based on you know um, the past 2 to 3 years of performances, he would certainly be up this list. But in terms of what I think he will do in 2025, I think he'll be the 10th best shortstop. Who do you have at number 9?
At number 9, I'm sticking with the same guy that I had at number 9 on my list last year. This is a guy that will be playing a new team in 2025 after being signed to a $182 million contract with the San Francisco Giants. It is Willy Adames. Yeah, he was my number 9 last year. Is sticking at the same place this year, and had a very solid season in 2024. Had a rise in OPS going up to 793. Runs again and also steal 21 bases. So, all around solid offensive performer with some very good, batted ball metrics. The expected slugging was over 460. The barrel rate has been over 11% for each of the last 4 seasons. He also had a career high in sweet spot rate at 38.2%. The fly ball rate actually outpaced the ground ball rate this year, which is always something that I really like in players with any semblance of power, which is something that Willy Adames has. His defense is a very interesting thing. It was a 1 point out above average last year, and some average looking numbers on Fangraphs. Mike Petriello, our good friend, pointed this out in a defensive thread earlier this winter. Out of 305 qualifying shortstops since 2016, Adames' estimated success rate, which was 68%, was tied for the 3rd lowest. It had also been over 75% in each of the other full seasons he's played. So essentially, some of the reasons why maybe you saw a defensive decrease for Willy Adames last year is simply because the plays he had to make were harder, which seems like it would be more of a luck thing than anything. Like I mentioned, a 68% expected success rate, which was very low. I believe tied for the lowest of any shortstop this year, the 3rd lowest of every shortstop season since 2016, and also a sharp decrease from what he's used to. I believe that could be a fluke and it could go back to normal next year with the Giants. And, I think he'll become an elite defender again. Excuse me. I think he can become an elite defender again with the Giants. And, like I mentioned, I think that offense can continue. I know leaving American Family Field maybe isn't the best thing, but I don't think that the decrease should be drastic if it exists at all. So I'm going to put Willy Adames at 9.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. My number 9, I'm sure you have this guy probably a good bit ahead of 9. I have Carlos Correa at number 9. He was my number 10 last year. And yeah, with Carlos Correa, he's heading into his age 30 season. He finished 9th among shortstops in F4 last year, despite only playing 86 games. And yeah, he had some major improvements, definitely on the surface, some major improvements from 2023 to 2024. His OPS plus increased from 94 to 152. And also he had some significant drops in strikeout rate and whiff rate. I think, strikeout rate dropped by like 6 percentage points or something like that, which is a, pretty major difference from year to year. What I will say about some of that offensive improvement is a lot of other things under the surface stayed pretty similar, which, I think some of the things that explained his on the surface stuff improving was not necessarily fully in his control. So what I'll say is his WOBA increased 76 points from 2023 to 2024, but his expected WOBA only increased 28 points. So that's just to say that his on the surface stuff improved a lot more than his under the surface stuff. And he also had the sixth luckiest difference in batting average and expected batting average, and increased his BABIP by 71 points from 2023 to 2024. And yeah, and I guess on the defensive side, something that looked really good is his outs above average went from +1 in 135 games to +5 in 86 games. But to summarize, I'm impressed with his offensive and defensive improvements, but his offensive improvement wasn't as drastic as the results say. So I don't really expect him to be a 152 OPS plus guy next year. I expect him to be somewhere in maybe like the low 130s. High 120s, maybe a little bit above that. And yeah, I guess the last thing you can say is, there's very few instances where I'm gonna necessarily factor in health, but he is someone who has struggled with it historically. He's only played 140 plus games in a season once since 2016. And he's kind of had a lingering plantar fasciitis thing, which took him out for much of last year. And I think he was dealing with that for all of 2023. So that is something to look out for. And unfortunately kind of has to go against him. But yeah, Carlos Correa at number 9, although I see many reasons for him to be above that. Who do you have at number 8?
Chris, when has anyone ever been concerned about Carlos Correa's injury history?
Yeah,
come on.
it
What are you talking about? No one's ever said that.
It's definitely never cost him over $100 million.
No. Not that. And even if it has, it's not like it's happened twice.
Exactly.
Come on now.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm talking about Dansby Swanson in my number 8 spot. I would imagine you probably have him higher on the list. I know you've always been a big Dansby guy. He was my number 4 last year, so he is dropping a bit. Of all the defensive talent that we have on this list, Dansby Swanson is, I would say, still the best defensive shortstop in all of baseball. He put together 18 outs above average last year. The best among all shortstops. He put together a 97th percentile fielding run value. Additionally, he's also an elite base runner, even if he doesn't necessarily have the sprint speed to show it. He makes really good base running decisions, and it kind of shows in all of his other statistics. The offense has been slightly declining every year. He only had a 312 OBP last year. He had a sub 400 slug, was barely over 700 for the OPS. But I think there's still room for optimism. Dansby's ground ball rate went from 52.7% from March through June of last year to 47.4% from July through September, which is a over 5% decrease between inside the season itself. Over that span, his weighted runs created plus went from 87 to 110. So I'm not saying there's direct correlation there, but I think there's definitely something. So the offense can be a concern with Dansby, but he showed signs within last season that it can be better in 2025. So I think there's definitely a little more optimism on that front for me there. But obviously the defense is what it is. The base running is what it is, and that's fantastic. At the end of the day, though, he still did have a 5% gain in ground ball rate, a 2% drop in fly ball rate, and also a 3% drop in the line drive rate, which I don't love seeing those out of a guy that's it's supposed to be primarily a contact type of hitter. But even then, Dansby, had quite the drop in home runs total last year. He went from 25 in 2022 to 22 in 2023 to just 16 in 2024. And obviously that first year he was on the Braves, so that's a bit of an unfair justification. But regardless, I have him as my number 8. I still think he's the best defensive shortstop in the game. I would like to see a little more offense. I don't know how capable he is of that.
Right. Yeah, my number 8 is your number 9. It is Willie Adames. I had him at number 9. I matched him last year at number 9. And yeah, he is heading into his age 29 season, coming off a pretty good payday, 7-year $182 million deal with the Giants. Um, but yeah, still, even despite going into free agency, he's still in his 20s. Um, and last year, had some good highs last year. He finished fifth among shortstops in F4 last year, and he ranks ninth over the last 2 years. And he's coming off career highs in expected slugging and expected WOBA, which is stuff I like to see. Like, results are results, but when you're putting together some good under the surface stuff, I like that heading into a season. And yeah, from 2023 to 2024, he had a significant decrease in ground ball rate and a significant increase in fly ball rate, while keeping his pop-up rate about the same. Usually when, fly ball rate goes up, pop-up rate goes up as well. But he kept his pop-up rate fairly similar to what it was in previous years. And then along with the, good trends in ground ball rate and fly ball rate, he increased his average exit velocity. And then also he stole a career high 21 bases on 25 attempts. So yeah, not only did his hitting do better, but he was a better base runner as well. And yeah, I guess the one detraction or the one regression from 2023 to 2024 was his defense. It got it got worse last year, but what it will it was elite the 2 years before, and sometimes on defense, with evaluations, there can be outlying seasons, and I don't know if that's necessarily a trend or an outlier. So I'm sure he's still a pretty good defender. So I'm not necessarily going to put that completely against him. And even in a down year, he was at +1 outs above average. So yeah, I really like what I saw from Willie Adames last year, in terms of hitting improvement and base running improvement. So yeah, he's my number 8 this year, and I think on a lot of other lists he'd be a lot further up. Who do you have at number 7?
Yeah, at number 7, again, this is a guy. This is the only newcomer I have on the list completely. Guy who wasn't on any list of mine last year, but made some major improvements to the point where I decided it was time to talk about Elly De La Cruz on one of these lists. And number 7 is quite low for a guy of his talent. And the results that he put up last year and the results that I think he's capable of putting up. But yeah, like I mentioned, the shortstop talent is just absurd. He upped his OPS by 100 points. Every doubt, most of the doubts that people had about him, he kind of told people off on outside of the strikeouts. But if that's a part of the Elly De La Cruz game, if strikeouts are a part of it, I'm cool with taking the good with the bad. If he's going to put up a near 92 mile per hour average exit velocity, 13% barrel rate, and just barely above average fly ball rate and line drive rate, I think that's an excellent trade-off to make. And one that I would take every single time. Yeah, I mean, Elly De La Cruz, we know him as one of the best power speed threats maybe in the game, right? I mean, in terms of just the sheer ceiling of power that he has, the ceiling of base running ability that he has. 25 home runs and 67 stolen bases last year, along with elite defense at shortstop, something that I wasn't too sure of coming into this year, but I mean, he really did it. Again, he did it 2 years in a row now with 100 percentile sprint speed as well. Despite the bad strikeout rate and whatnot, his chase rate was actually pretty good. It was 32.8% last year. It went down to 26.9% this year. Obviously the whiff rates and stuff are still what they are, but I mean, if the chase rate could go down, maybe it could provide some hope for the strikeout rates and the whiff rates. But regardless, he's obviously a very good power hitter. He's one of the most fun players to watch when he's on. And one thing that I really like is how he finished the season last year, specifically on some of the things that he has more control over. His average bat speed went from 74.7 miles per hour from March through July to 76 miles per hour from August through September. So that's over a 1 mile per hour increase over the last 2 months of the season. His fast swing percentage went from 50.2% before the span to 60.2% in this span. So that's obviously something that he can control more. It definitely has a tendency to lead to more sort of power and some of the things that we like from Elly De La Cruz. I really like that's how he finished the season after playing a full season. Normally, you'd expect the other way around, where he goes all out through April and May, and kind of coast through the rest of the season. But I think it's very encouraging that he, kind of brought it up a little more towards the end of the season. So I have him in my number 7 spot.
Right, right. Yeah, he's certainly proved us wrong in a lot of ways this past year. My number 7 is Dansby Swanson. You had him at number 8. I had him at number 3 last year. And yeah, he had a decent year last year, but in terms of when you're going up against the guys you're going up against, you are going to drop down the list if you're not if you're not basically an MVP candidate. So yeah, he goes down the list a little bit. He's heading into his age 31 season, and he finished 8th among shortstops in F4 last year, and he ranks 6th among them over the last 2 years. What I did like from Dansby Swanson is how, like with De La Cruz, how Swanson finished the season, at least in terms of results. He ranked 3rd among shortstops in F4 from August on last year. And, some of the offensive struggles he was having sort of righted themselves. But still, yeah, overall, I'm kind of looking at the offense as a whole. But yeah, looking at defense, he leads all fielders in outs above average over the last 3 years. That's among, not just among shortstops, but among all fielders. And on offense, that's where some of the concerns lie. His ground ball rate has increased and his fly ball rate has decreased each of the last 2 years, which has led to his home run total and slugging dropping both of those years. So in 2022, he was at a pretty good spot, but in 2023 and 2024, he's suffered some regression in that aspect. So that's led to just his general offensive production dropping a little bit. So that kind of drops him down the list a little bit, but I would agree that he is, just kind of consensus best defensive shortstop in the game. And his offense isn't bad enough to where I'm, completely dropping him off the list. So yeah, he's my number 7 shortstop in baseball. Who do you have at number 6?
Yeah, number 6. This is where I put Carlos Correa. You put him at number 9. Last year I put him at number 8. So there is a bit of a discrepancy for him between us here. I still really like Carlos Correa. I think despite obviously the health concerns and maybe the smaller sample size last year with only 367 plate appearances, I think he's much, much closer to what we saw last year with the 905 OPS than what we saw previously in 2023 with the 711 OPS. I think he's quite considerably closer to that, and I wouldn't be shocked if he stays above like 850 this year, with elite defense and with manageable base running. Like you mentioned, Chris, 5 outs above average last year. He's still very good at the shortstop position. He's entering his 30s now. And I still think there's a lot of reason to be excited about him. First of all, he had his lowest career strikeout percentage last year at 16.6%. He also had his lowest career whiff rate last year at 20.4%. So I really like that. It's obviously a good thing to look at going into age 30. Normally that's some stuff that you start to see going up by that time. The xwOBA was at 358 last year. Chris, I know that you were concerned about the lack of a increase between the expected statistics from last year to this year. Carlos Correa pulled 36% of his fly balls, the highest of any shortstop I have on this list, and a career high for him by 6.6%. It gave him the largest home run to fly ball ratio at 23% that he's had since 2017. And we know that the expected statistics obviously don't really consider where you hit the ball in the field. I think this increase from Correa sort of explains the lack of the increase in expected statistics, because all these balls are getting pulled by him. That's where he's getting his increased results. And yeah, like I mentioned, the highest pull rate on fly balls throughout his career by nearly 7%. That's really encouraging for me going forward. I think it's good that he's timing balls up a lot better now than he has been, on that front. And with the elite defense, with the potential power that he still has, I still think he's an elite shortstop in the game when he's on the field. Obviously, that is the major question is when he's on the field. But I'm putting him number 6. I have some big expectations for him this year if he can stay healthy. I really do feel optimistic that he can continue to be one of the elite shortstops in the game.
Right, right. Yeah, at my number 6, this is where I put Ellie De La Cruz. He was not on my list last year. So yeah, he's the only guy on this list that was not on any list last year. And yeah, Ellie De La Cruz is heading into his age 23 season. So yeah, it's easy to forget, how young he is considering the level of the level of the quality of a season that he just had. Yeah, he ranked 4th among shortstops in F4 last year. He led Major League Baseball in stolen bases. He led all players in stolen bases, and he led shortstops in BSR. And he ranked 5th among shortstops in outs above average. So he was an elite base runner. He was the best base runner among shortstops last year, and also one of the best defenders as well. And then, along with that, a 119 OPS plus. So on all fronts, he was at least doing pretty well. He had a significant decrease in ground ball rate and a significant increase in fly ball rate and barrel rate this past year, which sort of quelled some of those offensive concerns that we had about him. And that it kind of showed up in the results, and that's why in 2023 he was a significantly below average hitter, and in 2024 he was not, and he was a significantly above average hitter. So yeah, and I would say it was very hard to put him at number 6, considering the level of season that he just had, but it's just because he has a great class of players ahead of him. Not often do you put a guy who just had a 6-win season at number 6 in a positional list, but that's just the level of the level of players at the position here this upcoming year. So yeah, who do you have at number 5?
Number 5, I think this is really where I start to get bold here. I think there's a very good possibility we could be looking at this one in November and laughing for me being hilariously wrong. But I put Mookie Betts in my number 5 spot. And how do you justify putting 4 players on any list ahead of Mookie Betts? Well, I'm gonna try my best. Look, he did get injured last year. He was hit by a pitch in June that took him out for a couple months, and he didn't exactly look the same after the injury. He looked like he looked like Mookie Betts, before the injury. Was an awesome player, but still, I think there are some minor concerns that I have, which, given the amount of talent on this list, that just kind of makes him fall below a few other people. His barrel rate last year fell from 12.4% to just 6%, the lowest that he's had in a season since 2017. The highest barrel rate that he had in any month was only 7% in June, the month that he got hurt. So there is, I don't love that. I mean, that's definitely not a great sign. Another thing is that there was a steady decrease in pull rate that also was happening before the injury. It went from 45.4% last year to 34.3% in 2024. The 11.1% drop in pull rate was the 3rd steepest decrease among qualifiers. He also had lows since 2017, like I mentioned, barrel rate. Also in average exit velocity, his average exit velocity was below 90 miles per hour for the first time in 7 seasons. So that was, something I obviously didn't love. Of course, he's still Mookie Betts. Of course, he's still one of the best players in the game. He will be on my top 50. Will probably at least be in my top 20, maybe 15. But the shortstop defense also wasn't fantastic last year. It wasn't bad considering he's never really played it to a steady degree in the big leagues. But obviously, there's a lot of talent on this list. So I had to be bold and put 4 players above him. I have Mookie Betts, my number 1 second baseman from last year, as my number 5 shortstop.
Yeah, I'll stay bold with you because I have Mookie Betts at
Wow.
number 5 as
Wow.
well. And yeah, and I don't even think that speaks much to the lack of quality of Mookie Betts. It just speaks to
No, no.
how
That's
amazing
how
I think.
deep this list is.
Yeah, it speaks to how amazing I think the other 4 guys are. Yeah, Mookie Betts, he was not on this list last year because he was, they the the word was he was going to be a second baseman, or he was, I think the Dodgers announced he was supposed to be the starting second baseman. So I had him as the number one second baseman in baseball last year. But yeah, he's the number 5 shortstop in baseball. For me, heading into 2025, he's heading into his age 32 season. He ranked 7th among shortstops in F4 last year and ranks 4th over the last 2 years. And yeah, he did miss some time last year, but he's still qualified for all the right stats. He still had over 500 plate appearances and whatnot. So him ranking 7th among shortstops in F4, I don't think is necessarily it's not a complete misrepresentation of what he did last year. But yeah, just he is one of the most elite hitters on this list. Arguably the best hitter on this list. Among 26 shortstops with 800 plus plate appearances over the last 2 years, Betts ranks 2nd among them in OPS. But yeah, just looking at what happened last year, his average exit velocity dropped 2.5 miles per hour, and his barrel rate was cut by more than half from 2023 to 2024. I think a lot of what I was optimistic about last year with him was he made great improvements in those areas, but it seemed like they've kind of gone back to where it used to be, or even worse than what it used to be. But in terms of things that were positive, 98th percentile strikeout rate and 92nd percentile walk rate. Those are elite numbers. He was the only player in baseball to have 92nd percentile or higher in both categories. That is, no matter what your average exit velocity and barrel rates are, that's going to put you in a good offensive spot. And it's part of the reason why he had a 145 OPS plus last year. But yeah, and then on defense, he had -4 outs above average at the shortstop position, +3 defensive runs saved. So maybe there is some sort of optimism to be had about his defensive ability at shortstops. We're still kind of waiting to see where he is at defensively at shortstop. So, but yeah, he's definitely not among the elite class at the position on the defensive end. So can't necessarily put that for him. But yeah, I'm still pretty optimistic about what he can do offensively, but not necessarily the best defender. And just yeah, there's unfortunately there's 4 better guys on this list. So yeah, I think yeah, he will be better represented on the top 50 list
Yes.
for sure.
Yes.
Who do you have at number 4?
Yeah, number 4, I think another guy, like you said, that will be better represented on the top 50 list, because given the season this guy had last year, yeah, it's hard to name 3 guys better, but I'm going with Gunnar Henderson from the Baltimore Orioles in my number 4 spot. Yeah, this guy had a phenomenal season last year. There's no other way to really put it. He had, yeah, an 893 OPS, of 97 percentile hard hit rate. Very good across the board. Also very good defensively for a 22-year-old, a 23-year-old playing the shortstop position. He was an all-star and, an MVP candidate around the first half of the season. Like a lot of his teammates, he did tail off a bit in the second half, but regardless, it was still a phenomenal season for him. I would like to see him hit a little bit better against four-seam fastballs, and also just, I guess, fastballs in general. He had a 0 run value on four-seamers, a -1 on sinkers, and a -1 on cutters last year. And obviously, four-seam fastballs specifically are the pitches that you see the most. I would like to see him hitting a little bit better on those. I mean, he wasn't bad by any means. He hit 245 with a 473 slugging on four-seamers, which is very good, but we're talking about Gunnar Henderson here. Now, that being said, he is probably the best breaking ball hitter in the entire league. He posted a 23 run value and 12 run value per 100 against breaking balls in 2024. Both of those led the 255 hitters with at least 100 plate appearances that ended on breaking balls. So you throw him a curveball or slider, you're doomed. You throw him a changeup, it also is you're doomed, not a breaking ball, but he did very well against those as well. I would love to see him hit a little bit better on four-seamers, but regardless, he was absolutely phenomenal against breaking balls. He had a really solid season and was an MVP candidate for much of the year. I think that can continue very much in 2025. But for now, I think there are 3 shortstops that I anticipate will be better.
Right. Yeah, I thought I was gonna be the Corey Seager optimist, but apparently I'm the Corey Seager pessimist because I have him at number 4. He ranked number 1 on my shortstop list last year. Um, but yeah, he's heading into his age 31 season. He ranked 6th among shortstops in F4 last year, and he ranks 5th over the last 2 years. Among 26 shortstops over the last 2 years, he has the highest OPS. So yeah, I think he is the best hitter on this list. Although his OPS plus went from 174 to 145 last year. However, much of that regression was really luck based, unfortunately for him. He had the 8th unluckiest difference in slugging and expected slugging out of 216 batters last year. And that was despite having the highest rate of fly balls being pulled of his career. So it's not necessarily, it didn't, the difference in slugging and expected slugging did not have to do with where he was hitting his fly balls. Because he was pulling fly balls at the highest rate of his career. And yeah, just like in terms of underlying stats, they were all really, really elite. He had 72nd percentile strikeout rate and walk rate, 88th percentile sweet spot rate, 91st percentile average exit velocity, and was 95th percentile or higher in all expected categories, while also putting up +5 outs above average. So yeah, I mean that's just a really good sign heading into a year. If like he probably, I think his OPS was 865 last year. He probably should have had like a 920 something, 930 something OPS based on his underlying numbers. It just happened that he ran into a bit of bad luck. His BABIP went down a good bit. His BABIP should be naturally high, but it was below average last year. And yeah, like I'm expecting him to do maybe not what he did in 2023, but I expect him to probably be a little bit closer to what he did in 2023 than what he did in 2024, based on the fact that not a whole lot changed in terms of what he was actually in terms of what was in his control last year. It just the ball seemed to find some more gloves last year, unfortunately. I guess the one detraction I do have, and maybe what dragged him down below one or two other guys, is he's only played 125 plus games once in the last 5 years. I guess 2020, no one played 125 plus games, but in the last 4 years, he's only played 125 plus games once. So yeah, last year he started out the year with a groin issue and ended the year with a hip issue. So yeah, he hasn't necessarily been known for staying on the field, and I guess I can rely on the other three to stay on the field a little bit more. But that's a very small thing compared to everything else. I really expect a good year from Corey Seager this upcoming year. Who do you have at number 3?
Yeah, everything you just said is pretty much exactly why I put Corey Seager in my number 3, because I do think he's better than what he should have been better than what he was last year. He deserved more than an 865 OPS. He deserved more than a 140 weighted runs created plus. And I think if he does everything the same way this year, there's no reason why we shouldn't see him at a much higher on a much higher value in terms of wins above replacement, in terms of offensive value and whatnot. Yeah, I mean, you pretty much said everything that I wanted to say. Seager's pull rate on fly balls increased. His barrel rate on fly balls remained the same. His barrel rate on what I said, his barrel rate on fly balls remained the same, and his barrel rate on pulled fly balls went up. Yeah, despite this, his home run to fly ball ratio went down from 26.7% to just 21.8%. I don't believe that should have continued. And I think if we play this season over again, giving him the exact same metrics on everything that I just mentioned, we should see more from him. And that's why I put him in my 3. I'm banking on Corey Seager continuing to do what he did with the underlying stuff and actually getting the results that he deserves. Yeah, I mean, a 561 expected slugging and a 512 actual slugging with good pull numbers, which is weird. Usually that's the other way around. Obviously, still elite as a overall hitter with all the barrel metrics. Hard hit percentage was high, sweet spot rate was very good for him. Yeah, I don't know. I think you kind of just took everything out of my mouth that I wanted to say. Also, the reason I put him above Gunnar Henderson, one thing I do say often is a tiebreaker can be how they are against four-seam fastballs, and Corey Seager has always been an elite hitter on four seamers. He's had at least one run value per 100 against four seamers in every year since 2019. Can pretty much bank on it again this year, I would say. And that's always a tiebreaker for me because that's the pitch that you see the most. If you do well against it, I think if you do well enough against everything else, you'll be very good. So I'm gonna put Corey Seager in my three. I'm banking on a much better season from him in 2025.
Right, right. Yeah, I'm excited to see what he has in store. My number three is Gunnar Henderson. Um, he was my number three third baseman last year. But that's not to say that he is that I view him in the same light as I did last year, because he's certainly gone up the list on the overall players. But yeah, Gunnar Henderson is heading into his age 24 season. He ranked second among shortstops in F4 last year and ranks third over the last 2 years. He made some major hitting improvements last year. Definitely on this, definitely in terms of results, his OPS plus went from an already good 125 to an elite 159 from 2023 to 2024. And was 80th percentile or higher in walk rate and chase rate last year. Was 92nd percentile or higher in all expected categories, as well as bat speed, average exit velocity, and hard hit rate. And I think what separated Gunnar Henderson from Corey Seager from me was the base running. He went 21 for 25 on stolen bases with a 51% extra base taken rate, and also +3 runner runs, which is a new StatCast metric that measures kind of what you do as a runner when the ball is in play, when you're not necessarily the guy hitting it. So he had +3 runner runs, which is a very good thing, which kind of adds to the extra base taken rate. And yeah, so I'm I'm really hopped up on his hitting improvement, as well as what he was able to do on the bases. And also he has played 150 plus games each of the last 2 years. So, he's been able to stay on the field along with, great performance, which resulted in, I think, an 8-win season for him last year, which is pretty absurd for a 23-year-old. So also with youth being on his side, I think that brings him up the list. But overall, just really impressed with what he was able to do last year, and there's potentially even more he could do this upcoming year. Who do you have at number two?
Yeah, number two, this is where I put Francisco Lindor, my number three shortstop of 2024. And now he's my number two, which, I mean, he moved up a spot. Did he deserve to? Maybe. I mean, he should probably, if anything, deserve to be number two last year. But I made a bold prediction. Regardless, he was an excellent, excellent player last year. Finally did something to get the recognition he deserved. It should have taken all that. But regardless, he went out and put up a 500 slugging percentage with elite base running and elite defense and Francisco Lindor defense. I don't even think we need to call it elite. We know who he is. We've known who he is for a very long time on the show. His barrel rate went up to 13.6% last year, a new career high for him. His sweet spot rate stayed around the rate that it has been at, around 35%, which is excellent. Strikeout numbers were low. Walk numbers were high enough. The ground ball rate was actually quite lower, usually kind of as low as it has been. A lot of the batted ball metrics in terms of, type of fly ball stayed relatively the same, except for there was actually a good decrease in pop-up rate, 2.7%, which always love to see less pop-ups out of hitters. That one kind of goes without saying. But the power numbers were really on display last year, better than they have been in previous years, at least, since the end of the juice ball era. Lindor barreled up 31% of his fly balls in 2024, which is a new career high for him. He also had a 96 mile per hour average exit velocity on line drives. This was a career high for him. So when he was hitting the ball the way that you want to, he was doing it very well. He was hitting hard fly balls. He was hitting hard line drives, doing them at a good rate, playing that elite defense that we know him to be, and also, base running very well. 3 runner runs, like you mentioned with Gunnar Henderson as well. There just really wasn't an area where Francisco Lindor wasn't a very good player last year, and I'm very excited to see what he has in store next year. I have him as my number two shortstop.
Yeah, I also have Francisco Lindor as my number two shortstop. He was number two for me last year, and yeah, I or yeah, he actually wasn't. He probably wasn't even in the top two among shortstops last year in terms of well, definitely in terms of wins above replacement. He's heading into his age 31 season. He ranked third among shortstops in F4 last year, but ranked second over the last 2 years. And he's coming off career highs in OPS plus, barrel rate, expected slugging, and expected WOBA. He was 90th percentile in barrel rate last year, which is not something that is normal out of Francisco Lindor. And he was 95th percentile in expected slugging and expected WOBA. Along with that, he posted a 3-year high in outs above average and finished third in outs above average among shortstops. And he was one stolen base shy of a second consecutive 30-30 season, and also only got caught 4 times, 29 for 33 on stolen base attempts. And then to put the cherry on top, he has played 150 plus games each of the last 2 years, or each of the last 3 years, excuse me. Yeah, I mean, like, Francisco Lindor didn't really have to prove anyone to anybody, but he went out and put up his best year of his career. Amazed us in both, on the surface offensive numbers and under the surface offensive numbers. Let's not forget, he was like the unluckiest hitter in baseball for the first 2 months of the year, and he still managed to find his way into the MVP runner-up spot. It's pretty amazing. I'm really impressed with what he did last year. I was already high on him last year, but he outdid expectations. And yeah, unfortunately, because of how above and beyond the other guy went, he has to be number 2 on this list.
He does.
But yeah,
Yeah.
without further ado, who is your number 1 shortstop in baseball?
Yeah, my number 1 shortstop in baseball. I put him at number 2 last year. It was considered bold at the time, but I believed, and it paid off. Bobby Witt Jr. is the number 1 shortstop in baseball. He proved it last year, put up an outstanding season with over 10 F4. Was, like I said, elite on pretty much every front. One of the best hitters in the game, perhaps the best base runner in the game, one of the best shortstops defensively in the game. Just an excellent, phenomenal season all around in Kauffman Stadium. Yeah, a 10.9% barrel rate, or excuse me, a 14.3% barrel rate. That's barrels per PA. Yeah, I mean, like everything was just excellent for him last year. To sum it all up, he became one of just 10 players to put up a season with 170 OPS plus, 30 stolen bases, and 1 D-WAR, which is setting him as elite as a hitter, a base runner, and a fielder. The other 9 players to ever do so are Dan Brothers, Hannes Wagner, Eddie Collins, Home Run Baker, Tris Speaker, Ricky Henderson, Barry Bonds, Mike Trout, and Mookie Betts. That is, I mean, when you think of some of the best seasons ever, when you think of some of the best players ever, they're on that list, and Bobby Witt Jr. is with them. There are some phenomenal players that aren't on that list. Think about that. Think about the fact that Willie Mays never did exactly specifically what Bobby Witt Jr. did last year in terms of all of those numbers put together. I know that he played in maybe in some cases more of an offensive era, and it was tougher to put up a 170 OPS plus, but regardless, Bobby Witt Jr. just completely showed out last year. Even in Kauffman Stadium, he still got the results, a 977 OPS, a 332 batting average. Even with a low pull rate, he still got the results. This is a 25-year-old going into this year who already got his money, right? He doesn't have to play for anything. He's a Kansas City Royal for life, as he is, agreed to. And yeah, I mean, there's really not much else to say. The numbers kind of speak for themselves. He was, and they even without the numbers, if you watched him play last year, you know that he's the best shortstop in the game. He showed it last year, and it is very exciting that we get to watch this guy for the next decade plus on the Royals.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, and like, and with that number of 170 OPS plus, 30 home or 30 stolen bases, and 1 D-WAR, live ball era, it's just him, Henderson, Bonds, Trout, and Betts.
Yeah, the last one was Speaker, right?
Did Speaker do it in the live ball era?
He might have. He played from 1907 to 27. I know that.
Yeah, I don't think
Let
he
me
would.
check. When did Tris Speaker do this?
I don't think he would have done it in the live ball. I think, especially given that it's an OPS plus and not OPS.
Yeah, the last he did put up a 177 and 182 OPS plus in the live ball era. I don't know if he put up 1 DWAR.
Right.
No, he did not. He only did it in 1914.
Uh-huh.
What about Home Run Baker? Yeah, no, he definitely wouldn't have done it.
But yeah, given he was named Home Run Baker and he hit like 12 per year,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't think
they had one chance to dish out that nickname and they did not deliver. I mean, hey, don't get me wrong, Home Run Baker was a great player, but I mean, man, he led the league in home runs 3 times. When did they actually name him Home Run Baker?
I don't know. Maybe he entered the league that way.
Like he was, hey, he was hitting, he was the home run guy before Babe Ruth, so I'll give him that. But yeah, he hit 11 in 1911, 10 in 1912, 12 in 1913, and 9 in 1914. So actually 4 straight years he led the league in home runs. Yeah, they watched him hit 9 home runs in 150 games. They were like, this guy's special home run Baker because he hits so many home runs.
Exactly.
That's like a
But
decent, month.
right. But but yeah, my number one is also Bobby Witt Jr. I had him at number 4 last year. Um and uh and yeah, he definitely rises up the list because that's what happens when you put up over 10 F4. He is you know, along with that, he's very young. He's heading into his age 25 season. Led shortstops in F4 last year, and he leads shortstops in F4 over the last 2 years. And yeah, even though he had a really good 2023, he made some significant improvements, which made him an elite player this past year. He increased his average exit velocity 2.0 miles per hour and barrel rate by 2.8 percentage points. He also increased his walk rate while decreasing his strikeout rate and was 98th percentile or higher in all expected categories. And then also he was 94th percentile in average exit velocity and 92nd percentile in barrel rate. And along with being an elite hitter, he has the second most outs above average among shortstops over the last 2 years, and he won a Gold Glove in 2024. And then, along with being both an elite hitter and an elite defender, he ranks second in BSR among shortstops over the last 2 years and had a 63% extra base taken rate last year, and ranked third in all of MLB in runner runs, which is what I explained with the Gunnar Henderson numbers. So, yeah, not to mention 31 stolen bases, which made him a 30-30 player, along with being a Gold Glover. So yeah, it's everywhere. Everywhere on the field he dominated last year. Everywhere on the field he's been dominating the past 2 years. So yeah, pretty astounding what he's been able to do pretty much since like July of 2023. Turns him into the best shortstop in baseball. So yeah, that does it for this list. I guess we can go 10 through 1 with our lists.
Yeah, I mean, we had the same 10 shortstops, which I think we were kind of predicting before the show. Obviously, different order, but I had Trey Turner, my number 10, Willie Adames, 9, Dansby Swanson, 8, Ellie De La Cruz, 7, Carlos Correa, 6, Mookie Betts, 5, Gunnar Henderson, 4, Corey Seager, 3, Francisco Lindor, 2, and Bobby Witt Jr., number 1.
I had Trey Turner at number 10, Carlos Correa at number 9, Willie Adames at number 8, Dansby Swanson at number 7, Ellie De La Cruz at number 6, Mookie Betts at number 5, Corey Seager at number 4, Gunnar Henderson at number 3, Francisco Lindor at number 2, and Bobby Witt Jr. at number 1. This probably has the most overlaps so far that we've had in a list, I would imagine.
Yeah, which
Um,
this, if there was going to be a list, it would be this one. Like there was a clear cut 10, I think. I
yeah.
don't even, to be honest, I don't even remember who I considered after Trey Turner.
Um, Yeah, no, it like there really wasn't too much to consider unless you were banking on like a Bo Bichette bounce back year
Yeah,
or JP Crawford to get back to what he was in 2023. Like yeah, it was there not much competition. I wouldn't be surprised if like all 10 of them are in my top 50 or at least 9 of them.
I was
Um
thinking the same thing. Yeah.
so so yeah, but yeah, we had the same number 10, we had the same number 5, and then same number 1 and number 2. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, we
Really, the
definitely
only big discrepancies are Correa and uh, Henderson slash Seager.
um yeah, pretty much just Correa.
Because I mean,
Yeah,
we agreed on like the order of like Dansby and then Ellie.
yeah, exactly.
It's just
Um,
we had different ideas of Carlos Correa and Adames, but like, yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually now that so yeah, the I guess we can talk about we could close the show out by comparing some of our because we've done some positional lists and MLB Network has released some of their lists.
It's true.
And
They haven't done shortstop. They did catcher, right?
they did catcher, they did
Which
center
is that
field.
okay? Center field.
I like yeah,
When you
so
look at their catcher list, it was very clearly only using B War.
yeah, which is rough. It did not look
It is weird. Like I said this, like they always market like they used to market the. I've been watching these top 10 lists since like 2015. Like for like 13 into 14, 14 into 15, something like that. And they used to market the shredder as like this cutting edge thing that like humans cannot understand. And it's baseball reference. This is the list you would get when you put it into baseball reference. Their catcher list, they had William Contreras number one. You and I both had him number two, so not too much to be upset about. You and I are pretty passionate about Cal Raleigh, but I'm not gonna scrutinize someone for putting William Contreras number one. I get it.
yeah.
Adley Rutschman two. I disagree, but again, I get it. Will Smith number three is rough.
Um yeah, that is very rough.
He
I
barely stayed on our top tens.
yeah, I think we both had him
I had
at
him at number
number
10.
or you had him at number 10, I had him at number 9.
Yeah.
Um and yeah, just the fact that he's ahead of Cal Raleigh is that's probably the worst thing out of all of them.
Uh, Cal Raleigh number four. He should be number one. JT
Yeah,
Realmuto at number five. If I had kept going with my list, he would have been like number 13.
exactly,
Like I
exactly.
didn't even like I considered him, but no.
Cal
Yeah,
Raleigh, yeah, Cal Raleigh should at the bare minimum be number 2.
yeah.
That's the worst he could be.
Yanner Diaz number six. Where did you have him on your list?
I think I ended up with him at 7.
Okay, so that's not too far off my top 10. Gabby Moreno at number seven. I had him at nine. You had him at nine, I believe, or number 10. You had him at
10.
10. Alejandro Kirk at eight. Actually, not bad. Sean Murphy at nine. I can see where the discrepancy comes in. I had him as my number five. Austin Wells at 10 is pretty tough.
I had him at
No
6.
Francisco Alvarez, no Patrick Bailey.
Yeah, no Patrick Bailey is rough,
That's
and
offensive.
it makes me wonder because obviously Statcast and therefore Fangraphs, values his defense very, very highly. So I have to imagine that, yeah, Baseball
Mhm.
Reference had him at 1.8 WAR last year, because I guess I imagine like Baseball Prospectus's framing probably didn't value him very highly. Even still, um, defensive run saved had him at plus 20 last year. So I'm surprised the WAR didn't carry up. I guess the positional value on for catcher on Baseball Reference isn't that high, whereas Fangraphs it is.
Mhm.
Um, no, yeah, in on Baseball Reference, the R the RPOS, which is basically your positional value, is plus 8 for Patrick Bailey, which is really, really high. So I don't get why the WAR wasn't higher. Interesting. Um,
Center field, the list wasn't as bad. One through five was Julio number one, Merrill number two, Buxton number three, Harris number four, Trout number five. You could flip flop some of those things, but did we have? I think we had the same top five, like in terms of just the players on it, right?
I think I had Harris at 8.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Who'd you have in your top five then?
I had Merrill number 1,
Julio number two.
Julio number 2, Trout number 3, Buxton number 4, and Brenton Doyle at number 5.
Yeah, he didn't make their list at all.
Yeah, that's tough.
I don't know. I did not personally. I did not have Brendan Marsh in my top six.
No.
No. And they had Varsho number seven, which I actually did consider him, but he was hurt, or he's going to be
Yeah.
hurt to start the year. Garrett Mitchell at eight, also considered, just didn't make the cut for me. O'Neill Cruz at nine. I had him at six. You had him around the same place. Um, Luis Robert, I had as my number 11. So I mean, not terrible.
Yeah, I think I had Robert number 9 or something like that.
Yeah, and they did the relievers as well. I didn't do my relief pitcher list yet, so I'll have to really look back on it after I'm done to compare.
But yeah, no, it is fun to compare the us to, the state-run media and what they
Yeah,
think. But yeah, center field, not a horrible list. Brandon Marsh, that weirds me out because it made me think like, oh, was I missing something
I
with
did the
Brandon
same thing. I
Marsh?
was like, wait, did I just like completely miss him? Like, is this just like bad ignorance on my side? No, I don't think I would have done it.
Yeah, I
He,
think the
don't get me
shredder
wrong, he
is
was solid, but I wouldn't have put him above any of the guys that I put on my list.
I think kind of the explanation is it's always been judged on baseball reference. And back in 2015, that was like, oh wow, they're like
That's the
using
thing. I feel like they just haven't
replacement.
updated the actual criteria of the shredder since StatCast became a thing.
Exactly. So
Because
like
that's most of what we look at for our lists.
right, right. Yeah, like I think in 2015, like using wins above replacement was like, wow, they're really going for it here. Now it's like, okay, well, that's kind of the minimum now. Now you should look at more things. And I think that's why, like, if StatCast didn't exist, I don't think I'd put Patrick Bailey number 3 in
Yeah.
my
By the way, while
consensus.
we're talking about like things that MLB posts, I always love this thing that they do every year where they predict the next 10 World Series champions, or like the who will play in the World Series for the next 10 years. They made this post last week. We don't really need to get into too much into what they have, but I tried to find the last, because they've done this for at least like the last 3 years now. They always change every single matchup, and it's like, damn, what happened the last year that really made them change their mind on 2033?
Right.
Like, I don't remember what they had, but I'm gonna say in 2023 they had like they had the Guardians and like the Reds or something. And this year they had the White Sox and the Cardinals. It's like, what happened with the Guardians and Reds this year, where they're like, man, the 2033 trajectory looks real bad now that the Guardians drafted Travis Bazzana and the Reds drafted Chase Burns. Never mind.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, that's weird.
Like, it's funny because it's clearly just it's an engagement post, and I respect that on social media. That's what you got to do. Yeah, I have no issue with it, but I find it amusing just the lack of consistency over the years.
Yeah, it is. It is. It does take people who have attention to detail like we do to actually
Yeah,
care
to
about
actually
these
point these
things.
things out,
Yeah.
because it's like, it's the kind of post where it's like you make it and everyone forgets about it in a week. But I remember thinking about this exact same concept last year, where it's like they changed up 2032. What happened?
Yeah. Right. Right. Right.
They
Yeah.
were like, it's like, I think I find it very funny, just the idea that they actually like keep track of these posts at MLB, and they're like, well, yeah, we put White Sox and Cardinals for 2033. I don't know, the White Sox haven't really changed much in the last year. Let's just keep them. But like next year they will have a different 2033.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
It's
I.
definitely always a case of like, we don't represent this team enough. Let's throw the White Sox in there.
Yeah. Right. They'll lose enough to get some
Like
good
the
picks.
hopefully, yeah.
Not that it really matters with the White Sox. They're just gonna waste them. Um, but yeah, that's fun episode, fun list for sure. That we will be doing left fielders next week, and I will be trying to sort out who actually is the left fielder. Because
Yeah.
we already
Yeah.
had that challenge with center field.
Do we use Jordan?
Yes, do we
I don't
use
think so. I think
Jordan?
they have him listed as a DH. We always go
Um,
off the Fangraphs roster resource for
for the most part,
if you want a little peek behind the curtain here. Yeah,
yeah,
they have Jordan as a, yeah. Will Taylor Trammell be on our list?
yeah, exactly.
Yes or no?
Will will the Red Sox all of a sudden
Decide that Jaron Duran's a center fielder. I'd be
yes,
so mad.
yeah, and now we now we have the list wrong.
So Cedon Rafaela gets traded tomorrow.
Yep,
They have Duran
exactly.
as a center fielder. It's like, well, we just can't rank him. Sorry.
Yeah, we're Yoshida's now our left fielder. Um,
Yeah.
after playing 0 games in the field last year. Yeah, yeah, fun episode, fun list. We got left fielders next week.
Yes, we do.
So yeah, that'll be a doozy. Lot less competition in that one, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and want to watch the conversation as it happens, go to the YouTube channel. It is called Above Replacement Radio, and I'm just gonna say it, put it out in the ether right now so that I actually get to doing it. I will be putting out the lists by themselves, top 10 catchers, center fielders, first baseman, shortstops, putting out the list by themselves. Check out eventually the 2025 positional rankings lists will be in a playlist. So if you want to catch up, those will be out there relatively soon. I'll probably space them out every few days and schedule them, but they should be out pretty soon, just like the 2024 ones. Also, check out the guest interviews playlist on there on the YouTube channel. We've had Mark Simon on 4 times. We've had Jeff Passan, Chris Rose, Sarah Langs, Mike Petriello, among others. So yeah, and we just had Matt Frash on, our reliever for the Seattle Mariners, just a couple months ago. So yeah, go check that out. And follow us on social media. Follow me on Twitter at Chris_Gianta. Follow Dan on both Twitter and Instagram at Daniel_Curran, and follow the show Instagram at Above Replacement Radio for all the show needs. We hope you enjoyed this one, and we hope to see you next time, where we will be talking all the happenings in Major League Baseball and the top 10 left fielders in baseball. See you then.
This conversation is over.